In this next episode of What's Up with Vasan, you shall meet with a stoic, eloquent, and a wiser beyond his years actor, creator, writer, and now filmmaker Mr. Ankur Vikal. Boasting huge credits early in his career, this National School of Drama alum earned his stripes in the big leagues, having played the enigmatic Boti in the Vishal Bharadwaj directed Maqbool and the sadist Maman in the Oscar winning Danny Boyle classic Slumdog Millionaire. Thereafter, Ankur silently and steadily created a formidable repertoire across a slew of films such as Saina, most recently seen in the Tamil movie Beast, OTT shows like Paatal Lok, and has been a part of international theatre collaborations such as the hugely popular Nirbhaya and the Motley group comprising stalwart actors like Nasiruddin Shah and Ratna Pathak. This Ireland-based actor is also a regular in the Irish theatre circuit and is embarking upon his own film there. Our discussion meandered through many of Ankur's works, breaking down some thoughts on society, the prejudices and privileges of us as men, and of course the topical fan favorite subject of, you guessed it, nepotism. So please turn off your cell phones and other devices, grab a drink, sit back, and like always, please watch this interview and leave behind your comments. Thank you. It's interesting, when I was reading up on your background, I found out that your father was an activist, and that you constantly moved from one place to another. Your mother was a teacher. Can you tell us a bit about how your life was growing up, a bit about
Sure,
your family?
sure. It was like any middle class family in India in a smaller town. I grew up in Gujarat, and dad used to work in companies as in the personnel department. So he would often be taking up uh, the causes of the laborers and getting into trouble with the management because we have a slightly capitalistic country back home or world even.
True.
Uh, so he obviously didn't do
Conform.
extremely well at his jobs. He kept getting fired because he'd be taking up a lot of causes and which meant a lot of upheaval and stuff like this. But great values were instilled since we were children by mom, who was a teacher, and by dad. Um, yeah.
Nice. Okay. And for you to then take up or be interested in architecture and then leave that to get into NSD, can you walk us through a bit of that transition? What led to that transition?
Sure. So medicine was what I was drawn to. When
Hmm.
I was in high school, I was studying science, like, we have uh, physics, chemistry, biology, and math and stuff. And I was good at those subjects, and I wanted to be a psychiatrist.
Oh,
I
nice.
reckon because I loved listening to people, and you can learn so much when you have a chat with someone and you learn about their life choices and their values and ethics and stories. I guess I was drawn to stories, and I used to do plays, but I never realized that was the calling. I thought psychiatry was it. I thought I would get to listen to people and help them.
Hmm.
Helping and healing and stories and conversations was what was uh, the urge in high school. But then I botched up my biology paper in class 12.
Who
I wrote
doesn't?
a wrong answer to like some uh, question about the frog's brain.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Instead of the lateral section, I wrote about the horizontal section, which was 25 marks. So I didn't get into medicine because of a momentary lapse of reason. I knew the answer as soon as I was out of the examination hall, but this was how it was meant to be. So I didn't have a decent enough, percentile to join MBBS, but I was getting engineering, and I didn't want to do engineering. Uh, and One had read books about architecture, and it sounded cool, and like to an 18-year-old, it sounded pretty esoteric, reading about Howard Roark and the Fountainhead, and
Yeah.
ethics and values and art and so on. So I thought, hey, architecture could be it. So I applied for the entrance exam and at MS University, Baroda, got in there, joined architecture. And while doing architecture, I started doing plays with Arun Agnihotri. He used to do plays in Baroda.
Oh,
So,
nice. Okay.
so he had a theater group called Playhouse. I started working on plays with him, and then, architecture eventually started informing theater. I started designing sets for the plays that I would act in.
Brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, and then
I mean, brilliant transition also, but also the fact that you can always carry over lessons you've learned in a different walk of life, and it's so
totally,
applicable to the context of life that you're in next.
absolutely. I'm sure all these interviews that you conduct would inform whatever you choose to do eventually. It's just that we don't see the larger picture when we are in it.
Absolutely, yeah. You're always
Clearly,
drawing from people, right? You're always like, for me, it's always interesting when I love being at an airport, not with the idea of just the thrill of the travel, but I love observing people myself. Like my favorite pastime is if I was in a public place, I constantly love to imbibe everything around me.
sure.
It could be something as random as someone sitting in a corner not doing anything, or someone, there's an activity going about. But anyways, coming back to you, I don't want
Makes sense.
to. Yeah. So interesting. So National School of Drama obviously must have been a massive sort of experience in terms of learning and in terms of personal growth. Who were some of your contemporaries that are currently active in the circuit today?
Everyone, basically, Nawaz was probably a few years ahead of me. He must have graduated around the time I joined.
Okay.
Yeah. The others were a bit senior. Irfan was a very dear friend.
Oh,
He,
wow.
so he used to come home and used to have chai and chats and stuff. Some of the work that I initially ended up doing with Motley was offered to Irfan, but he wasn't so keen on theater. He was pretty clear. He just wanted to do cinema.
Yeah.
More power to him. But he was a lovely person. So there's some great teachers, but one also learned from one's classmates. You get in and there's 20 people from various parts of the country and you sweat together for 3 years. You really learn so much from your classmates and juniors and seniors and so on, I suppose, and the teachers. Nasir sir used to come and teach us.
Right.
His work has been like, probably the spine of the, discipline that I think acting constitutes. And it's not just a whim, but it's a discipline. And it just involves hard work, like cleaning a room or,
Sure.
washing a toilet. It's not really, I don't find it very esoteric and poetic. I just think like any job, it requires a lot of work and, generosity and surrender. Rehearsals, riyaz, like
Right.
all of our art has constantly been speaking about since time immemorial, be it our
Riyaz.
classical Indian musicians or theater in the Natya Shastra written 2000 years ago. It just involved discipline, I think.
True.
So everything can be broken down, every emotion, but it just involves, like you said, observation and self-work and discipline.
Correct. So, did you carry your body of playhouse theater work to National School of Drama to show them what you had? Because I'm imagining that you need to show a body of work before you get before you qualify.
Not really. There's 3 levels to the interview. They have a preliminary round in which they chat with you and make you perform a couple of pieces. They send you a bit of Shakespeare. They tell you to choose a piece. They tell you to sing and dance, stuff like that. And then once you've cleared that and the form, they call you to the school for a 4-day workshop in which they observe you all day and they make you do things and, put you in situations, send you to Paharganj, make you observe the people there and enact things that you saw on the streets, stuff like that. But they observe you for 4 days and it's pretty lovely,
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
always. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
It's a good school to have in the country because every other acting school in the country charges you coin. These are the only guys who pay you. So you're a government scholar, like a national scholar. There's 20 people to choose, and like they really the pressure of money is off your head. So you're not a burden on anyone, and you're kind of paying for your passage through the drama school, and that's a bit you feel a bit good about that.
Yeah.
There's
I was in
a little
fact just looking over websites that offer online acting coaching, and then I came across Anupam Kher's coaching class, and I don't mean to name drop, and I'm not necessarily pointing him out, but I think just relevant to what your point is. I was amazed at how much they were charging for a
Yes.
1 year course or a diploma course. It was in the lakhs, and it was just stunning because I here live in Canada and I come across fee structure of that sort of level.
Yeah.
And to see that it is being offered by someone as successful was just wow. That's and ironically, I think he came from National School of Drama himself, didn't he?
This is true. This is true. But the same is true for spirituality, Vasant. I mean, I've kind of been drawn to, understanding the mind and stuff. But other than Vipassana, offered by, Satyanarayan Goenka's Dhamma.org online, they have centers all over the world and they teach you Buddha's technique for free. But everyone who's learned it along the way, like all the bigs in India, charge you coin to teach you how to be true. I wonder, like, I understand the commercial aspect to everything, but I don't know, it's like spirituality and learning, I think needs to be, funded by the country or the state somehow, so
Yeah.
that there's an equal opportunity for everyone to learn things. Otherwise, it's like, skewed. People who come from wealth end up having a foot in to every space.
Yeah. And I think this will also form what you just said, the crux of some of our discussion going forward, because I find that you as a person have not just imbibed that quality about you, is to not feel commercially exploited. Or you demonstrate that through your being. You're not someone who is a sellout. I think you're one of the few people that has remained true to his virtues, to his values. Um, can you speak a bit about that? Like why the allure of Bollywood, of stardom has evaded you by your choice or not by your choice?
I guess you uh, need to work on being visible to get better work. Like, and this is not just in India, this is all over the world. There's a lot of actors who are comfortable being wooing fame, and maybe that informs one's job as an actor, and maybe it's an important part of it. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm very proud of um being unable to do it. It's just what comes naturally to me. It feels like here when I work with a theater company, or like, I'm getting funds to make a film or work in writer's room and I'm writing scripts and stuff. And I feel more comfortable having chats with people, and it doesn't feel like I'm uh, networking, because it's what I would like to do. Speak with people who are like, doing something because they love to do it. But I think the pressure of wanting something to do well commercially, including oneself, takes away some truth from everything. As I was saying about yoga or vipassana or meditation or truth seeking and all this stuff, which is what I thought storytelling is. Like, there's films that moved us as children, and that's why we like acting or cinema or theater. It's just stuff that we watched and it overwhelmed us. Uh, I I think it's all stupid what I'm saying. Like, when I write a story, sometimes I wonder, is it good to scare a child if I write something that is a bit scary? Is it okay for the child to feel a particular way when he reads the story? Since I like to write a lot about children's literature, I like writing stories because I feel kids are very smart, and I would like to write stories that speak about uh, dark things, because there are kids in the world who are living through those things. So then why can't the other kids watch those things or listen to them? But to have this really uh, uh, this want to really just do work for fame or as a commercial art, and to the hunger for applause and visibility. um, I'm not saying I don't have it. Of course, as an actor, I would like decent coin to mind my loved ones and, like, be comfortable. But I haven't figured the balance. Let's put it that way. I'm just still learning. I think I enjoy acting a lot, but I don't enjoy the trappings of stepping out to access great work. And I think that's half the job, but maybe I suck at that half.
Maybe maybe there are people in this world that are still true to their values, and that's the category you fall in. Because I spoke with KK Menon, and who I consider, extremely special as an actor, one of my favorites, and he spoke about this himself. He said that how much is enough, right? Is it enough that I just get to pay my bills and I'm happy with my sort of existence, or do I need to be a superstar who walks out of his home with a million floodlights and flashlights in my face, where I'm sort of repeating the same act over and over again, and I've become a parody of myself now, because I've become this fake person because I've always postured to be this fake person. And in being that person for so long, I've forgotten who my real true self is. So how far are you going to lose yourself, right?
So, yeah, I have a really lovely friend. His dad used to, ask him something that sums up everything for me. "Tu khush hai na yaar?" That's what his dad used to ask him. And I think I keep going back to my being and asking myself that question. And I think that's the only benchmark, because there's an abundance in the universe of all kinds of things, and there's enough for all of us. As long as we are happy and we're not like, किसी को बुझने नहीं दे रहे हम हमारी बातों से. We're not trying to fuck anyone's happiness. We're just like, happy and working on ourselves, and it's also fleeting. I mean, the
It is.
pandemic has also pointed it out to us. It's also fleeting, man. So what could be the only thing that we pursue, I suppose, is truth and happiness and kindness and stuff like this that our mums and grandmoms used to tell us all along anyway.
Very interesting. So you spoke about writing children's literature and being conscious of what you're writing, and wondering about how that makes an impact. The choice of roles that have come to you, or that you've made, the choices that you've made, a lot of them have, when I observe your filmography, right, from Maqbool to Slumdog to Beast to others, Paatal Lok, Betal, I noticed that there is this. Is there strife within you? Is there a lot of pain within you when you take up these works? Are you necessarily looking for these parts to redeem yourself, or to like get that pain out? Is there any such suffering that you've gone through, if you don't mind me asking?
I like to understand all kinds of people, and I try to do all kinds of characters. Um, Nasir sir often uses this word onomatomania. It's this urge that an actor has to compulsively revisit situations on stage or like in rehearsals to understand something. So we keep revisiting the same circumstance again and again to make sense of it. Answering your question about work, I think I started my career with doing protagonists, and I did a few films like Missed Call and Mango Souffle and stuff, and things. Missed Call went to Cannes and opened IFFI in 2005, and it did really well. We made it with very little money, and I'm very proud of that film. So I did those kind of protagonists, and The Forest was another one. And then I said, one of my friends who's a filmmaker and from drama school told me that maybe you can't do dark roles. So I said, hey, I need to try that. Then someone else said, maybe it'd be hard for you to play guys who are rural. So I said, yeah, I need to try that. And then someone said, comedy might be a bit, elusive. So I wanted to do that. Then the fall guy or the victim or the oppressor. And like, I just wanted to understand all these guys, because we are all of them, right?
True.
It just depends on circumstances, and we are choices away from all these roles that we play in life with various people. So I'm just interested in storytelling and all kinds of roles, really, as long as they're being done with the right intention.
Yeah. Are you at peace with yourself?
Sure. Yeah.
You come across as someone who's extremely calm, composed. Have you always been this way?
No, man. I mean, I'm still working on it. I'm, constantly trying to call my bullshit, and I'm full of it, like all of us are. But like, I think it's taking out things. We also have abundance in us. I'm just trying to lose the things that I may have taken in out of fear, or things like this.
Can you give me an example?
Um, like at one point, I realized that all the victims in the world seem to have a choice. They can either become oppressors or become someone who, helps the victim. Like we all have the choice. Like, and if you look at history, look at books, a lot of classic literature is about this person who was a victim. Like Anguli Mala was this really learned guy and went wrong because his teacher misunderstood him, and then he came back and again became decent. But like it's all choices. Like the Pied Piper of Hamelin was another story that really fascinated me as a child. An artist not getting a fair wage, turning around and you know messing with the world. So those roles are very interesting. And then I like to also try and understand how certain people who are hurt are such beautiful people that they help other people. Like, remove a stumbling stone,
Mm-hmm.
not add another five for the person who comes after you just because you fell.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, these are all just things that I'm extremely fascinated by. Just fascinated by humans and humanity and our potential for incredible amounts of greatness and evil
True.
and how it gets triggered.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, we get into a bit of your work now. We start with some movies that I have been quite fascinated by. Number one, Maqbool, my favorite. Like I've seen it, I don't know, innumerable times. And the character of Boti, Riaz Boti, has always sort of. I'd say I feel for the guy, like I feel for the guy, but at the same time, I feel mad at the guy for what he does right at the end. Did you have any thoughts about the character that you felt? I know it's not your job because you're just playing a part, but what was your take on the character and the way he kills Maqbool at the very end? You
Um,
feel it was justified or?
Macbeth is all about people and ambition. I think they're all of them are flawed and all of them are going wrong. All of them are where they are uh, out of bad choices, not necessarily noble ones. So it's, you know, Vishalji rightly placed it in the underworld because that's again how it is in the underworld. There's going to be comeuppance. Like someone has to settle your bill. That's how karma works.
Right.
At some point, things come back and bite you in the ass. If it's not someone else, it's yourself. Like in Dostoevsky, like if you read The Idiot or Crime and Punishment, even it's the punishment's how you perceive what you've done, and that's what happens to Lady Macbeth, for instance, for misleading Macbeth. And Macduff's family is ravaged, raped, and killed by Macbeth.
Mm-hmm.
So he has reason to kill him. They edited those bits out of the film because I believe I was told that Maqbool was coming across as too negative for a Hindi film hero. So they edited the parts of Macduff's family and being raped and ravaged. So and Macduff's breakdown and stuff. Those scenes were edited. But yeah, that's the story. In case you read Macbeth, you'll see how everyone is basically flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's a protagonist really. Like everyone's just different shades of dark.
Right. Right. And just speaking about the film itself, of course, you had such a wonderful crew of actors and technicians, I'm sure. I mean, even Vishal Bharadwaj himself. Any memories from the time that you worked with the great ones, Nasir, Ompuri, and Irfan, and all these guys, Tabu?
Very generous, all of them. Very generous people. Ompuri sir and Nasir sir are, of course, my teachers, and they've been extremely kind and encouraging. I've worked with Nasir sir for like a better part of my life, 15
What?
years of theatre.
Yeah.
And Ompuri sir was equally generous. He used to call me home if he ever saw me on the road, give me a pint and cashew nuts and stuff and have chats and speak about work. They were very generous people, very kind souls. And Irfan himself was, equally amazing. But I guess it's just been like I'm just very privileged that I got to work with all these people. With Irfan, I worked on a few projects. With Nasir sir, I worked on loads of plays and theatre, which is essentially the temple that, for all actors, I think. So, yeah, just, it's been fun.
And so would you take, part in theater in school? Like, were you constantly an actor just in your existence, like constantly being dramatic around people or doing things like that?
Yeah, totally. I guess what I really loved to do was make mom laugh all the time. Whenever I could, she'd teach in a school, and when she came back home, I would just try and laugh, make her laugh. And she was very generous. So sometimes if she was false at some auntie's house, I would come back home and, tell her, like demonstrate to her how exactly she was false, or ended up saying something or doing something that was not her. But she saw the humor in the way I used to do things and laughed a lot. And that was really gratifying, just making her happy as a child, I think, because I think our mums had a very tough life, and I just wanted to make her laugh. And that still informs all the stuff that I do. I just want to make people happier in any way that I can. If I can cook a meal for someone, I would love to do that. If there's a hungry person, I'd love to feed them. Just make life a little better for whoever we happen to, share space with for a bit, if possible. I mean, of course, we are irritable and we end up fighting with our loved ones too. But it's a nice feeling to be able to be of some use.
Yeah, got it. Your theater works. Let's start with the Motley group. You've done some very big works there. Manto Ismat Hazir Hain, the Kane Mutiny Court. So can you speak a bit about Manto Ismat Hazir Hain? I did have an interview with Ratna Pathak ji as well. So she spoke about Ismat Chugtai. Can you tell us a bit about that play, why it was important to you?
Yeah, sure. So again, Saadat Hasan Manto was this great writer whose work was not as appreciated as it could have been during his lifetime. He was tried for obscenity a few times by the British courts in the 40s and 30s, I suppose. And the story that I used to perform was called Boo, which was about a heady sexual encounter between this slightly urban middle class guy and this rural girl who works in a rassi ka karkhana, and he sees her getting wet under the tree, and she comes up and they end up having sex. And the piece, which according to Gulzarji is one of the most poetic pieces written out of Asia ever, was largely describing this woman's body and the smell emanating from her hairy armpits and from between her legs and her breasts, and just describing the beauty of love and lovemaking and sex. And it used to make people really uncomfortable when we used to perform it, the story. And then we used to also perform a story about war, which was highly appreciated, and like people would be falling down the aisles. And war is not considered as profane as something like the intimacy between a man and a woman. Hence, I suppose Matta was tried for obscenity for Boo, and I think it broke his heart, which is why he died penniless and insane and an alcoholic in an asylum at 42. But he managed to write a lot of truth. Not that he didn't write crap. He wrote stories for a bottle of whiskey, just sat outside the anteroom of magazines and wrote shit, which is considered like those stories are considered classics now. But he was just, writing them for money, and he stole some of Mopassa's stories and remixed them and shit and sold them to idiots who were not discerning. But he also wrote some really fragile and beautiful pieces of art, which were, not appreciated as much as they could have been. I suppose literature in India is not as much, I mean, as prolific as it used to be. We had like amazing writers like Premchand and, you know, Manto and many people, Tagore, of course. And like, you know, I don't find these kind of beacons anymore in our literature or even cinema for that matter, since that's just the next progression in storytelling. Maybe there's too many of us, and the urge to stand out makes people go wrong, because there's 1.3 billion of us back home, and like, you know, everyone wants to stand out, and maybe it makes people make wrong choices and stuff. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that there is definitely talent. I just feel like it's not getting the opportunity it deserves, right? Like we talked about how we spoke about fame and we spoke about movies and opportunities. I mean, you think about, I don't want to get into the whole, well, I actually do. This whole nepotism business, not in the way that Kangana Ranaut or some other personalities got into it, but it does take away from the opportunities, right? Like if Karan Johar is making a lot of movies and Akshay Kumar is going to be acting in half of the movies that are coming out in Bollywood, and he makes a movie in what, 40 days.
Sure, but it doesn't have to be either or. I mean, commercial cinema exists and has its utility all around the world. There are Indian films made everywhere, and I don't think it needs to be either that or this, but maybe also having, you know, independent cinema and letting that not be determined by commerce entirely. Uh, Otherwise, you know, what happens is even the actors who act in those kind of films are still playing the game and are still aspirants for the other circus, which pays better coin. You know, I just feel independent cinema should be able to hold its own and not be governed by social media and, like, you know, all this nonsense that we have now, to like we perceive each other. I'm sure there's benefits to having everything online, like being able to access literature and stuff. There's
Yeah.
lots of positives to it, but I think it's also being misused mainly by the mediocre to uh, get perceived as truer than, you know, they are often, and people buy into it. Like, you know, we all buy into what, how things are perceived, like how things seem to us is, and it's huge. Like, you know, how do you, like, we are told to buy certain things, we are told to watch things, we don't even know what it is, who is telling us, but it's people with money. They are forming our opinions and our minds, and who we consider good and what we consider bad. I think it's all just people with money telling us what to do, and, you know, we end up having similar weary chats. But it's, I don't think it's about uh, Karan Johar or Akshay Kumar or anyone. They're all valid and they have their, you know, niche. It'll always remain there. But it's a niche. That's not all there is to cinema in India. Like, you go to the various states in the country, and there's great work being made in all the states. There's commercial films being made in Telugu cinema or Tamil cinema, which hold their
Malayalam.
own. You know,
Yeah.
Bahubali was great fun to watch. RRR is something I watched recently, and I had a great time. So I mean, like working on Beast with Vijay was fun. I don't not enjoy commercial cinema. I think it has its role, and a lot of us want to watch a random Indian film sometimes. I don't want to watch Daniel Day Lewis trying to climb onto the wheelchair all the time. You know, I do want him to get the Oscar after I watch the film for 2 minutes. My left foot, I say कि यार तू ले ले Oscar, यार तू बहुत कमाल का actor है. But sometimes I just want to watch inane cinema
Yeah.
that makes me laugh and forget the times that we live in. And it's not inane, really. Making someone laugh is equally sacred.
I don't necessarily mean that that industry shouldn't exist. I think what I'm saying is when you take up so much of the space that they occupy, then you're
They
not giving, then you're not
they
giving.
don't.
But
Nobody
they do
does. I mean,
when they've booked out shows, when they've booked out movies all across the country, across 7,000 screens. How are the Nagesh Kukunurs, for example, going to make their films? how are smaller filmmakers gonna make their films if they're not gonna get space? How are they gonna get Anurag Kashyap? So legendary, like someone like him, unless and until he did a Bombay Velvet, would not have got the same scope of audience, the same magnitude of an audience that Karan Johar commands. Wouldn't you agree?
But uh, Karan Johar was still in that film, right?
Yeah, that was produced by him semi.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's all fine. I don't really dispute anything. Maybe the independent filmmakers needn't follow the same grammar or aspiration of a commercial film. Like getting a nod from them doesn't make an independent filmmaker truer. But like anyone in the commercial arena has to snap their finger, and all our independent filmmakers would want to make a film with them. Like Maqbool worked because everyone was from drama school, but Vishalji never made a film with trained actors after that. And more power to him. Mani Ratnam made some amazing film in the 90s, but he drove a Suzuki. Then he made shit films from 2000 onwards, but he probably has fancy cars and a huge house. But
Yeah.
that's something like, you are going to be uh, tested, and like whatever you want to do is valid. P.T. Anderson is valid because he'll write his stories and make his films. And um, I'm sure there's filmmakers in India who didn't necessarily have to go to stars to be considered good. I'm sure there might be filmmakers that we don't know yet who can make great art without following the same grammar of a commercial film or
But
the
then
same dudes.
they would possibly be remembered posthumously, right? Like their works would probably come to the surface, as would a Dostoevsky's did. You would be remembered as an afterthought. Oh yeah, there were these people who'd made these amazing works. We didn't celebrate them at the time they existed because they didn't get the space to, because all the space was occupied by the commercial folks. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that there is talent. I'm saying that there are writers. I'm saying there are amazingly talented people with a lot of scope, with a lot of talent in them, but maybe they're not getting the voice. They're not getting a platform to voice.
I'm sure they are. How else are we having a chat about all these people? Uh, Maybe they are not getting the kind of money that the other guys are, but the other guys are investing 100 and getting 200. These guys are investing 2 and getting 4. But that's just the math of it, which is fine. I think the only benchmark for something truthful can't be commerce. Even if cinema, a large part of cinema is a commercial art, all of it is not. I'm saying the pressure that a lot of independent filmmakers feel is unnecessary and they can share it. We don't have to compete with a commercial film. That has its place, and so does an independent film. It's just that most filmmakers are aspiring to do that, and most actors are aspiring to do that.
Yeah.
Like filmmakers from drama school, like we know them because of their commercial films more than their independent films, or like regional films stuff. But I'm sure, like we were talking earlier, I think it's all in a state of flux, and there's more people watching art across the world now. So we know the sources of films. Like earlier, people would just steal stories and tunes and music and art and pass it off as their own. But now people seem to recognize the sources, whether it is in independent films or commercial films. We all seem to have a better understanding of art. So it's just going to get better, I think. And I think it is much better than it was for our predecessors all the time. I think things are just getting better for the independent filmmakers too, and actors and everyone. I think life's just getting better, I think, for everyone involved. We just need to up our game if we want to be relevant. And relevant doesn't mean constantly being, liked by everyone. I mean, that's not even possible, right?
This is one of the questions I don't like asking, Ankur, but I'm going to ask because I feel like it is so relevant that you have to ask it, is how do you draw that boundary between what is acceptable and not, right? Because I think that seems to always be an issue in our country more now than ever before. Everyone seems to get outraged on the drop of a hat. right? Like you could just say hello instead of hi, and people, some segment of the audience may say isne hi nahi bola. So why have we become so sensitive? And if we have become sensitive rightfully, then what is the, how do you draw a parameter around what is acceptable versus not?
You don't. You're not supposed to as an artist. You're supposed to listen to your own voice and your own conscience.
What if it's
That's the strength.
unconstitutional? What if it's unconstitutional?
But like, think about it. Censorship, if it has any role in the world, it has, all it's done is ended up making artists more honed and truer. Think of Iran. Like, you can't show so much in cinema, but does that deter them, or does it make them create even more fantastic art? Like, they're making Where Is the Friend's Home and Taste of Cherry on broken tripods. And the state might have a huger censorship. Like, I was reading up about a hero that Asghar Farhadi made. Have you watched it?
I haven't.
Cool. But yeah, so there's controversies surrounding everyone, but I think it's like, I think there's a line by Ismat Chugtai that we used to use in one of the plays that, चट्टान में भी फूल खिलता है, सिर्फ खूने जिगर से सींचने की शर्त है.
No, but then that's still not answering the question, right? That's the question is, are you willing to be artistic at the cost of being unconstitutional?
But
Or now, whatever the buzzword now is anti-national. So
yeah,
because you can and if you genuinely are being anti-national, I'm not saying anti-national as seen through the prism or the lens of a political party and that claims to be, the face of secularism in India. I mean, genuinely, if you feel like this is against the ethos of my country, then acting in a play about some cause which is anti the nation, is that something that you would take part in?
give me an example.
Very simple. Kashmir. Uh, Obviously, Pakistanis have a narrative about it, right? Some elements in Kashmir have a narrative about wanting a separated Kashmir. We don't. And I, coming from a military background, both my grandfather and dad were in the military. I believe that, and just being a citizen of India, I believe that there is no negotiation on this. It's an integral part of the nation. I will not accept it if someone, when I say I won't accept it, I won't beat someone up, but I think it'll be unconstitutional for a filmmaker or a theater, a director to make content about supporting the cause that's anti the ethos of the country. What is your sort of take on that?
I believe in like freedom of expression, but like, then there's cons to it too. There's various people who've attempted films on Kashmir. It's where mom is from, so I do understand a bit about Kashmir, but not nearly enough to create any art. So what I would have to do is try and understand, or like listen to a writer who has actually, thought a lot about it. And if I felt, like I was telling you earlier, with any form of storytelling, if I feel that the intentions for telling the story are valid, I would love to, like, help tell a story. And then I wouldn't really think about how it's perceived. I kind of have an implicit faith in uh, speaking about truth, but with doing it with kindness. I feel it helps one go a little further than raging against anyone. Like, that's a bit counterproductive. That to answer somebody who's yelling at you, you yell back. What does that accomplish? Neither of us manage to communicate with each other. I feel there's a great value to anger, but it needs to be harnessed and channeled and communicated in a constructive way. So yeah, I would love to work on any story in the world, however controversial. Like we worked on a play called Nirbhaya.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about that next. Yeah.
So that's that's as close as home to home as it can get. It was about Jyoti Singh Pandey on the bus in Delhi on 16th December 2012, how it triggered women. And then these beautiful actresses, 5 or 6 of them, who shared stories about their own life, patriarchy and sexual abuse and stuff in all parts of the world. One of them is from Vancouver, from Canada anyway, but they rehearsed in Vancouver. Uh,
Oh,
and I think her story transpired in Montreal, I think, uh, or maybe the other way around. But like another story that happened in Chicago, some stories that happened in Pakistan or in India. But like I'm saying, all the places in the world seem to have cons, and so does home. But there's pros in all these places too. But doing the play and kind of understanding how one can be a part of a solution oneself as opposed to you know blaming the larger fabric. I think, of course, the larger fabric is flawed because it's made up of each of these threads, and all of us are flawed. So to call the bullshit in us is the first step, I suppose, to addressing a larger problem. That play was, yeah, very effective, and of course, it had its own problems again, like all art does. But the fact that we can speak about it is only because it exists, you know. So there is some validity to all of art existing, and then you can either agree with it or disagree with it,
can you
and
give
have
me
a
an
chat about it.
example? Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Not at all. Dogville by Lars von Trier. I watched the film and I was seething mad. I was so angry when I watched that film. I don't know what caused that anger, but I watched it with 2 of my friends, you know, in the same profession, and they loved it. And then I went back home and thought about the film, and it's like 180 minutes, and I watched it again once, and you know, I liked it. But it took a week to get from extreme anger that the film kind of provoked in me to understanding why Lars von Trier made it. Mm, yeah.
What about Nirbhaya? So, when the incident happened, you were obviously, like all of us, possibly shook and shattered. What led to the genesis of the play culminating together? What led to, whose idea was it?
So I was shooting a film in Delhi on that day, and the scene being shot on set was a gang rape. While this incident was happening on the street in Delhi, I was in a film set, and then when I stepped out, I was going to the airport to go back home. It really shook me because I mean, it's like as a man, you feel responsible for the kind of world we've created for half of the population. How we've misused physical strength and skewed the world. Like we end up getting better uh, coin and calling the shots unnecessarily and unfairly so in a lot of situations as men. And then uh, uh, Yael Faber, the director of the play, was invited to Bombay by Poorna, and they were going to meet a few actresses and try and figure uh, a piece. And I remember having a chat with some of my friends who were a part of the workshop and telling them that, if you're talking about gender dynamics, shouldn't you have a man in the room? I mean, like you're all going to talk about, how men are dickheads, but like have a man around. So I mean, like, we can have a conversation then. So they went and told the director, and she had no intention of involving a man, but she kind of met actors then. And when we met, she ended up taking me in the play, and I was the only man in the play, and I was helping all these actresses tell their stories and enacting the boyfriend of Jyoti Singh Pandey and the perpetrators. And it's all a bit much, Sometimes I would just, like, I really thought that I'd got all these things under a handle, that I trained and I could figure how to act now after so many years. Like the play, we started performing the play in 2013 in Edinburgh. And I thought I knew how to, you know, compartmentalize my work and finish the play and be able to get out of it. But like it started costing me a lot, and I had to see a therapist after performing the play for 3 years around the world. It won all kinds of awards, like an Amnesty and a Fringe First and all this. So it kind of got a lot of appreciation. And then we did runs in New York, and we came to Canada, and we performed it for a month in Toronto and Vancouver each. And we came to Ireland and places, and we performed it all over the place. And women everywhere were equally, flummoxed. That was the beginning of the Me Too movement in the world display, essentially. It was like, when it all, when women were just like, fuck this shit, it's enough, So I got to hang with all of them and understand my own bullshit, So I guess one way to approach the problems that we have in the world is to have this macro view of things, but I think I'm not so good at that. I think I only managed to think of what can I do. Like, we had this brilliant teacher in drama school, the guy who was one of the founders, Ibrahim Al-Qazi, and he used to tell my teachers that, what can you do all the time? Like, clean your fucking bathroom every day. Keep your slippers in the same place. Empty your dustbin. Keep your house well. Wash the kitchen. Look after the people you meet on the street. Like, at what level, like, how are we, what can we do to make things better, I suppose, is what really fascinates me. Because like often conversations about, wanting the world to be better might begin there. I can't really have these huge discourses about the larger picture, because I think we all form it. Like in Bombay, people always refer to the traffic as rush hour when they're outside, but like you're part of it, right? You're also sitting in a vehicle in the rush hour, when you're part of the rush hour. So like, it's not outside us, the conflict, it's us. Okay? And I think if everyone were to doctor themselves and try and take steps towards becoming slightly truer, I think we would see how the larger picture changes. It's probably tougher and longer, and it's actually the conglomerates and the rich guys who are causing all the damage. But that doesn't mean we're not complicit, or that we don't have the power to change and orchestrate huge changes on Earth. I think all of these huge changes were caused by created by individuals. Like, we spoke about so many, like Buddha, Gandhi, and stuff. And it's just one person, saying, "Hey, hang on, this doesn't seem right." I think we all have that power. Like I was saying, we all have stories and books and paintings in us. I think we have the power to do what we like about the problem. Else it can just end up becoming an intellectual wisdom as opposed to experiential, which is what Vipassana is, or I think might be useful.
Right. We're almost at the end. So let's talk a bit about your own works, what you're writing. Can you talk a bit about what you're writing these days? And also, I want to link to your children's literature or any kind of literature, any documentation of anything that you've done, because you're such a wonderful mind to explore. I feel unfortunate that we only had so much time, but I'm going to keep begging you for another one a few months down the line, and maybe a few more after that. But
Really
please tell me about what you're writing, what you have written, and where can we find it?
Not a lot of it is online. I've written some films that I would like to make. I have some funds from Screen Island, and they have this scheme called Actor as Creator, and they've given actors some money because they feel that actors have a great understanding of the form and are often not, given the due or respect of calling the shots and creating a film themselves. So I've got some money. It's a tiny amount, but I want to tell a particular story, which kind of touches on the larger, conversation that we were having as well, and that you are very rightfully pissed off about how things are all around us. So I want to make this film, and the producer. I mean, let's see. I'll make that in the next couple of months. I've written a play that this company that I'm working with right now is keen to produce. I performed a bit of it in February in Dublin, and people really appreciated it. And I want to do that as a full-length play. Basically speak about immigration and human life and value that all of us have in different parts of the world. And then I've written a few children's films about things like violence and stuff, because I feel kids are very intuitive and perceptive, and I think all of us knew much more than, like, I hate the kind of children's art we have where we talk down to kids. I think we were very smart when we were children, and we could understand nuance, and we could understand things that were happening behind the scenes at home. Like, our parents might have tried to shelter us to the best of their ability, but we knew things. So I wanted to write about things like this, but I feel humor is a great tool. So I've spent the past few years working on creative writing since Nirbhaya, because after Nirbhaya, I realized I wanted to speak about a few things. So I've been writing. I wrote a bunch of shit. I've written a few plays that I like. And I'll keep doing that. I'll keep honing it. Just want to do things that I have always been curious about. I eventually want to create a food forest and leave it behind for our loved ones. So I went and studied permaculture.
Wow.
Here in Wicklow. And yeah, just trying to understand things. I don't know what is it that I truly want to do, but yeah, just one step at a time.
I read in an interview of yours, I think it was on the Scroll, that spoke at the very end about how you want to go all guns blazing, even if it meant going down. And I loved that you're willing to forego everything for the cause that you believe in, or for the truth that you aspire to live. So I'm going to take that as a big lesson for myself, and going to endeavor to follow that as best as I can, with all my flaws, to stay true to myself and to go all guns blazing at the cost of whatever that brings. I want to, and we spoke about this the other day. I don't want to talk about that, but not at least on this session, but in this session. But yeah, so.
But I think I would like to change that statement a tiny bit. I don't think we need to let go of everything. I think we need to go down guns blazing to protect everything that we have sometimes. And there is a lot of abundance in the universe, and I would love to take a stand for everything that requires a stand. And if that involves, like, going all in on the poker table, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Any ideas for a tattoo that one can get in keeping with that? Any idea for a tattoo that one can get in keeping with that philosophy?
I have 5 or 6 of them.
Oh, you do? You have tattoos? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been honestly such a pleasure talking to you and exploring your wonderful mind. I genuinely am going to beg you for another one sometime down the line. I hope that you consider it. But it's been really an awakening to some extent.
Likewise, Vasant. It was such a fabulous time talking to you and learning from you. And I wish you the best in everything. And I hope we get to have a cup of tea or a meal in person sometime soon.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Lots of love, man.
All right. Thank you. Wish you the same.